Uh, Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar today on encouraging the adoption of AI in your workplace by understanding the different communication styles. So we're incredibly excited to walk this through with you. And with me today, I have Dan, and I'll introduce Dan in a second, but I'll start with myself. So my name's Lewis North. I am the Chief Technology Officer at WorkBuzz. And my role here is ensuring that we're building the right products and the right features into our platform, which is an employee engagement and employee listening platform, ensuring that we're building the right features and products to bring you lots of value and help you listen to your organizations and your employees better. So part of my remit as well is then ensuring that we're building these things in nice, secure, reliable, safe ways as well. So I get to kind of help with what we're building and then really get into the weeds of how we build that and make sure that it works well for our customers. And I'm very excited to introduce my co-host Dan Silvert of Velocity Advisory Group. And Dan is a behavioral expert, a keynote speaker, and he's an author published in 9 languages. So I'm going to let Dan introduce himself, and I'm going to hope that he does it in English so that I can understand what he's saying. So over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Lewis, and thank you for having me. Thrilled to talk about this topic. Just a little bit about me, co-founder of Velocity Advisory Group. We help accelerate the success of our clients through leadership, culture, strategy, and sales. It's essentially getting the most out of your people.
Very good, thank you. So yeah, Dan literally wrote the book on the birds model. So he's going to bring loads of insight into how that can impact the adoption of AI in your organization. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. So we're going today to cover 3 kind of areas, main topics. I'm going to just walk through a very brief look at some examples of AI and the different types of AI, and then typically how they are used in organizations and the typical use cases that you will see and the kind of tooling you will see. And then just briefly touch on kind of what best practice looks like for a rollout plan for implementing AI in your organization. I'll then hand over to Dan. He's going to walk us through the adoption of AI through that lens of the birds model, and I think give us an explainer as well as to what the birds model is as a big part of that. And then finally, as long as we're tracking okay on time, we'll have a look at some uses of AI and particularly at WorkBuzz, how we use AI in our product, and give you some real world examples and an opportunity for you to experience this yourself. So let's crack on. So we'll just start with looking at 3 types of AI. Now, obviously, AI is not new. It's been around since the 1950s, the kind of beginning of that, the genesis of that with Alan Turing, which is actually just 5 minutes up the road for me at Bletchley Park. And over the last 50, 60, 70 years, there's been various ups and downs and kind of false dawns of the adoption of AI. But before we kind of look at 3 models that you'll see used a lot in the world today, there's kind of 3 overarching concepts of AI. And where we are at the moment is this concept of narrow AI. So this is AI that has been designed to perform specific tasks or functions. So to give you an example, that's Siri, it's Alexa, it's ChatGPT, those kinds of things. So this is narrow AI. They're very focused on doing specific things. The next step is general artificial intelligence, which this is hypothetical at the moment. And based on our current technology, we think it's possible to do it, but no one's actually achieved this yet. And this is the kind of stuff that we hear Elon Musk talking about, that we're very, it's in touching distance, but the goalposts keep moving slightly and it keeps getting slightly further away. The next big leap on then is super artificial intelligence. Now, this is theoretical. It's grounded in science, but it's beyond our capabilities at the moment. And this is where AI surpasses all human intelligence in all fields and is self-aware and can express emotions. And this is HAL, and this is Skynet from Terminator and that sort of stuff as well. So it's a long way off in the future, and it's purely kind of speculative at the moment. Now, if I walk you through a couple of different types of AI that you will be familiar with, albeit the products that use it. So, machine learning has been around for a long time. It had a real peak in the kind of 80s, 90s. And this really is about analyzing massive quantities of data to look for trends and spotting patterns and making predictions about what may happen in the future. So you may see this in tools that do things like analyze staff turnover and help you to predict when you're going to need additional resource, in different times of the year. Or it could be looking at sickness rates and predicting when you're likely to have increases in sickness rates. It could be doing correlations between performance and engagement, which is something that I know our people science team do a lot, is analyzing those two data sets. Quite often it's recommendation engines as well. So, the classic example is Netflix of you've watched this, we think you'll be interested in this. And that is based on a machine learning algorithm that watches what everybody's watching and then makes a prediction based on those behaviors that others are doing. In our product at WorkBuzz, we use it when we're recommending actions that people should take off the back of surveys. The whole point of listening to your employees is to drive change. And once we've completed a survey, we have various algorithms that run that say, okay, if you want to improve the scores for this particular question, you should do these actions with your team. That's a classic machine learning use case. It's worth noting as well that you need huge amounts of data to be able to train a machine learning model. You can retrain it with more data and without having to do any more programming, but obviously you're having to train that data, the model with more and more data all the time. The next one to look at is generative artificial intelligence, and not to be confused with general artificial intelligence. And this is what you're seeing right now, this massive explosion with large language models like OpenAI, like Claude from Anthropic, like Gemini from Google, that sort of thing. Now, you'll hear them talk about they're trained on billions of parameters. Now, these are neural networks, effectively, so lots of little nodes all connected together. And if you imagine these parameters are actually like you can see on the mixing panel in front of you on the screen here, there's billions of these that are being tuned to adjust the relevancy and bias and weights between these nodes in this neural network. So there's billions of these all being tweaked and tuned all the time to improve those models. So that's what they're talking about when they talk about billions of parameters. These Gen AI models are amazing at creating content. They're amazing at analyzing text as well, particularly. They are multimodal though, so they can generate text, video, images, all of that sort of stuff. So all of the images in the deck here are created with Midjourney, which is my kind of generative AI for images that I prefer to use. So it's all of these are generated by AI. In practical applications for you as in your organizations, particularly with HR, it could be things like writing job descriptions. It's brilliant to get a starter for 10 for that. For creating adverts, for a great use case is rewriting learning and development resources. So making those resources appropriate to the audience that's consuming them. So somebody, let's say it's a production line in a factory floor, how they would consume learning and development resources is very different from a lawyer somewhere else in the organization. So being able to rewrite these things to make them appropriate, that's what this stuff's really, really good at. Combining some of this all together, we then get into retrieval augmented generation. And if you think of this as being, it's like a massive database where you can load in lots and lots of documents. So take, for example, you loaded in all of your HR manuals, all your policies, your procedures, your employee handbook, all of that into this massive database. You can then query that database and ask a question, and it may find the answer in a dozen documents spread out across all of those different corpuses of information. And then it uses one of those generative AI models, the large language models, to combine all of those answers back to you in something that's coherent. So I think you will start to see this stuff coming on stream very soon. Things like Copilot are starting to roll this out now, to allow you to interrogate documents without having to go and find all of the documents. Incredibly useful tools. You do have to be really, really careful around permissions. So making sure that people who are getting the answers out of these systems are allowed to see those answers. But they are incredibly powerful tools. In AI circles, Roy Amara, American futurologist, this quote particularly really resonates well, and this is embodied in what we see in the Gartner hype cycle. So I'll just give you a moment to read that quote. But we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And when we look at this Gartner hype cycle, this is the sort of perfect rendition of that. This is like a roller coaster over time of how technology is adopted into society, into our organization. So there's this innovation trigger that starts all the excitement. And we've seen this with AI a number of times. And we all get very excited because we think we're going to be able to solve all of our problems with these things. And that takes us up to this peak of inflated expectations. Now, the view is that the orange dot there is where we are with generative AI. And that's not necessarily related to the technology, because we're still understanding what we can do with this and how we get the most out of it. It's probably more related to the sheer cost to use these things and create these models, and how does that work with the revenue that they generate. And I think there's a bit of a realization at the moment of some of this stuff isn't going to pay for itself unless we change a few things. So that's the general view of generative AI and where it is on that hype cycle. Dan, feel free to chime in at any point on any of these bits if you want to add any more. I'm going to talk now about large language models, and that's where a lot of the activity is at the moment. So I'd be surprised if you haven't heard of many of these. So they're all from various suppliers. Again, they're all trained on these billions of parameters, and there's a constant kind of race of which one's better than others. And actually, you will find that some models are better at some functions and tasks than others, and it's worth experimenting with them to see which ones provide the best solutions for you.
Yeah, Lewis, if I could jump in real quick, I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about AI in general. Is that first they think that AI is a large language model. Two are synonymous, and they're not. The LLMs are a branch of that tree, but it's not the itself. And then when you think of OpenAI, you probably think of the large language model, but then there's deep research, completely different engine. Then you've got 1 and O3, and the truth is, a lot of people don't know how to. I don't know how to distinguish O1 from O3, except to say, excuse me, that they're reasoning models. So the difference between a reasoning model and an LLM is that a reasoning model is setting up a hypothesis, whatever query that you put in there, and then it's testing that hypothesis in 100 different ways, or maybe 1,000 different ways. And because of that, it doesn't immediately give you text like the LLMs do. It's actually thinking for whatever thinking is for a reasoning model. That's not kind but it's a completely different model than the LLM. So if you put the same query into ChatGPT, let's say, I think the latest one is 4.5, and put in the same query in O3, you will get very different answers. And then once again, deep research is a completely different application. So where you really see this is in Gemini, because Gemini, as far as I know, is their entire suite of engines are free. And if you sign up with Gemini with your Google account, Google email, and then you hit the drop-down menu, you've got like 7 different engines. And they give you use cases for each one, but you got to parse it out. So when people say, "Oh yeah, I tried it and it wasn't very good," well, which engine did you try? Did you try a different engine? And what was the quality of the prompt that you gave it in the first place? Right? So there's a lot of nuance here that I think part of the fear that people have about this and not understanding it is to just say, "Oh, it's not ready yet."
Yes. Well, actually, I don't know if you saw yesterday that OpenAI launched their academy, which is all completely free, loads of webinars, loads of tutorials on how to use OpenAI. And actually, they're very focused in who they're targeting as well. So, there, for example, there's one I was reading earlier that was very focused on the charitable sectors, for example. So applications of AI in the charitable sectors. So it's definitely worth going to explore some of that and have a play with these things, and actually using them to help you learn how to get the most out of them. So you can ask a question, and then actually you can ask it, how should I have asked that question to get this outcome from you? And use it as a training model on yourself almost as well. So yeah, there's lots of amazing stuff, isn't there, happening, and it's all changing so rapidly. And you're absolutely right about consistency of response, because even with the same models, you can adjust some of the configurations to allow it to be more or less creative in its answers as well.
And then you have, of course, Lewis, the agents, which are still very much in their infancy. Am I ahead of you? Were you about to talk about agents, or
no? Let's talk about that. Yeah, and that's the new wave, isn't it? That lots of the providers are now offering, which is effectively it can control your computer for you. So you can ask it to perform tasks, and it will go ahead and do that through your web browser. So in one of the demos I saw, it was saying, I'm moving to Brooklyn, and can you find me a school for my children? And it would go off and analyze all of the school reports and look at the reviews and the performance figures for the schools and travel from your location to the school and make recommendations for you based on all of these kind of data points.
Yeah. And that's just the research side of it. There's another site, and I don't know if I should name it. I mean, I'm not trying to be an advertiser for these sites, but there's another site coming out of China. When it debuted about a month ago, the web just kind of freaked out, and now they've got 5 million people on the waiting list, me included, by the way, because their server shut down and they couldn't function. And so what this site does, I'll name it. What the heck? It's called Manus, MANUS. I guess IM. And so what Manus does is it's an agent. So one of the use cases I saw was a gentleman just put in, research me and create a web presence. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
So it went out and it researched him. It went on to LinkedIn, and it went obviously to his website. It found all these blogs that he had written, right? And it created this gorgeous, because he showed it, like gorgeous website with all of his stuff. And then it started writing blogs for him based upon his expertise. And then, first of all, it hosted the website and it posted the blogs into various places. And then it wrote up a marketing plan for him. And then it started creating like an animated video of what it is that he's, one of those chalkboard videos where you're explaining something and then it draws a picture. Started creating that all off of one prompt, tiny. So this is why, there are a lot of people.
I mean, ultimately, this stuff is coming down the track very fast. And as individuals and as organizations, we've got to start to get ahead of it and get on top of it. I think one of the bits I'll just click into some of these next sections is we're seeing some trends in organizations of what's happening. And particularly when we'll start to talk about how you roll this stuff out, we've already seen that because the pace of change is so fast, many organizations can't keep up. So they're blanket banning access to these tools. And then what we've heard from, I was going to say customers, but from individuals, is that instead of not using it, they're just emailing data home and then using it at home. Like to write job descriptions is an example I heard, was they're not allowed to use it within the organization. So they do it at home and then just email it back into themselves because it's so fast to do it. And like there's a lot of shadow use of this happening in your organizations, whether you're aware of it or not, I think. So there's a few reasons here why we think you should be using it. So the great thing is it's pre-trained, these large language models. You don't need this massive corpus of data to be able to train your own model. You can fine-tune the models with your data, but they're kind of ready to go out of the box. They are amazing at creating these amazing at making sense of unstructured data, like text, for example. So we've heard that lots of people like to take outputs from surveys and put them into these tools. If you're doing it, please don't, particularly if you're in the EU, because you're sending data outside of the European Union. We have a solution for that, which we may get onto later. The other piece that they're brilliant at is when you're wanting to kind of narrow the focus of the capabilities, a custom GPT is a great way to keep the conversation on track on a particular topic. I can give you a good example of that. We were reorganizing our engineering team recently, and I wanted them all to learn some concepts from two particular books. But leading up to that, they didn't really have time to actually go and read both books. So we loaded both books into a custom GPT, and then it analyzed those, a bit like that retrieval augmented generation model that we spoke about earlier. So it knows all about these books. It then started to walk them through what the concepts are, and would then kind of start a conversation with them to help them understand what it all means and how we're going to implement it. And the really amazing part is lots of my team are Polish, living in Poland, and actually they could do it in Polish, even though the books are in English. They could go through the whole process in Polish. And that's the kind of power that these tools have to enable you to better empower your teams as well. The last little bit on here is just about things to be aware of. These models are trained on huge swathes of the internet, and thereby they have bias inbuilt into them. So there's a phrase in AI circles of garbage in, garbage out. So depending on what data you're feeding the models, that is going to bias what comes out the other end. A great example of this is if you use Midjourney and say to it, show me a picture of a successful business person. It will show you somebody that probably looks like Dan, a white male of a particular age is exactly what you get out. And that is just the bias from the data that it's consuming is affecting the outcomes that come out the other end. It's worth talking about privacy and security. These are the kind of fundamentals of AI as well, is bias, privacy, security, making sure that you're not leaking data outside of your organization, cross borders, that kind of thing. And I think to your point, Dan, the knowledge gaps in prompting, that is a big issue, that people are given access to these tools and really don't know what to do with it, and therefore dismiss it because they don't think it's right for them.
Absolutely. So what we see with our clients is a lot of adoption with Copilot.
Yeah.
But I think that, and I'm sure Copilot is terrific, but if you think that that's all there is to AI, that's a mistake. You need to be experimenting outside of that so that you know what's coming.
Yes, and actually you shouldn't be leaving it up to the IT department or another department to do that. You should be looking to do these experiments. And we've just put together 8 steps to a successful rollout. And this is kind of a logical step through of how you would approach getting some AI tooling into your organization. I will just say for those in the UK, particularly in Milton Keynes, where we're based, I thought when we're talking about a rollout of AI, we have to show the starships. So what we can see here, these are little delivery bots that circulate Milton Keynes, and they hang around outside shops. And you can place an order through Starship, and they'll go and the shopkeepers will put the goods inside these little bots, and they will autonomously drive around and deliver them to your house. So they're very cute, and quite often you see people admiring them as they're waiting to cross the road. So I thought we have to include an image of those. So yeah, look, check them out, Starships. They're very cool. So when we're looking to roll out AI in our organizations, it's important that you kind of start with the end in mind of what are you trying to achieve with the rollout of AI, and really being clear about your objectives of what you're trying to get at the other end of this. So I think AI is like all other technologies. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So it's important to be clear about the use cases and what you're hoping to achieve with it. You need to evaluate the organization's readiness. Like I touched on earlier, if you're not able to put the right controls in place to be able to start to experiment with this, it may not be the right thing for you. So you need to talk to your peers and make sure that the organization is ready to do this, even if it's in a controlled way, in a controlled rollout. You need to select the right tools and technology. There are a ton of tools out there, and they're sprouting up faster than ever. And actually, you're going to have to do your homework and go and try and find out what all these tools are and how you can use them in your organization and really what's possible with them. I think another key piece here is about data as well, and making sure that you've got the data you need to be able to use some of these tools. So where I talked about machine learning, if you want to use a machine learning model in your organization, you're going to need that huge corpus of data to be able to train that model to allow you to use that. Choosing the right suppliers, yeah. So again, do your research, go and talk to lots of them, make sure that they are going to protect your data, that they've got the right accreditations in place. In the UK, we would look for ISO 27001. I presume that same applies in the US, Dan, as well. And like HIPAA compliance and those sorts of SOC 2, those sorts of compliances. There is a new compliance specifically for AI, which is ISO 42001, I think it is, which is about the safe use of AI. So make sure that your suppliers are adhering to those things as well. Run a pilot, measure success. Yeah, so obviously you're not going to big bang the release of these things out. So you want to do it in smaller, iterative steps, and really you need a clear way to measure whether this is working and whether you're getting the outcomes that you need before you start to progress into a larger rollout. I think it's really clear that you have an implementation strategy. You need to talk to the stakeholders in your organization, like compliance, data protection, your chief information officer, the IT department, operationally, how is this going to work? And then particularly when we're talking about machine learning, this requirement for large volumes of data, can you get to it? Is it clean enough? Is it free from bias and suitable to train these models? You need to get all those steps in flight to be able to do this. And then you're into a kind of full-scale rollout across your organization. And really the final part of that is to make sure that you monitor the use of it, the outputs of it, and you're continually evaluating that and optimizing it. Because even with large language models, they do change. So that if you are shifting models, the outputs could be different. So you need to be aware of that. And even if you're training machine learning models, you can kind of overtrain them, and then you get kind of overfitting of the machine learning models as well. So you need to stay on top of that and make sure that you are monitoring what's coming out of these things, that it's suitable and appropriate. Dan, anything you want to add on any of that? Anything you've seen work well in the past?
Yeah, I think you've just clearly defined what two of the styles that we're going to talk about would require in order to. There are other two styles. This is some of it is a nice to have, but not a need to have.
Yeah.
But for two styles, this is two other styles, the ones we'll really get into.
Okay, well, on that note, I'm going to hand over to you. If you want to share your screen, I will stop sharing.
Okay, well, thank you, Lewis, for such an informative and thorough look at this from the implementation perspective. So now we're going to go from implementation to the implementers, because they're people. And to the extent that we have high levels of self-awareness, each one of us, meaning when we look in the mirror, we actually see who's there. We understand ourselves under stress. And rapid at this point, accelerating change is typically stressful for lots of people. So if we understand that, and we understand the why behind that, we have clarity in the mirror, then the chances are pretty good that we'll be curious about other people and why they respond to rapid accelerative change differently than us. So distortion in the mirror, by contrast, creates all kinds of problems, because if we don't really understand ourselves, then the chances are we're confused, mightily confused by others. So the paradox is the more you get yourself, the more you get others, by contrast. And so we're going to use a very simple model to, yes, classify behavior. That model is DISC. Some of you may be familiar with it already. Others are maybe familiar with other models. But in this case, we're going to talk about eagles, parrots, doves, and owls, which lines up to the DISC behavioral style model. And when you think of an eagle in the wild, the chances are pretty good. You don't have a soft, cuddly, kind creature in mind. Eagles are, well, ferocious. They are apex predators. So are we suggesting that eagles in the workplace are predators? No. But we are saying that eagles in the wild dive bomb for prey, and eagles in the workplace dive bomb for goals. And they bring intensity to that pursuit. And this is their default state of mind. So when we talk about AI, they're going to apply that default to this particular topic, this unfolding reality. Then we got parrots. When you think of a parrot, it's probably not a depressed creature. I don't think people buy parrots because they're sad and morose. They tend to be cheerful and colorful. They draw attention to themselves, and they're wildly creative, very clever. They're very open. Parrots in the workplace bring that energy. So the parrot approach to AI, well, we'll get into what that can look like. When you think of a dove in the wild, the chances are you think of a peacemaker. It's the international symbol of peace. So doves in the wild nest in huge flocks. They travel together. And so built into a dove's DNA in the wild is that if the flock is threatened, then I'm in trouble. And so a dove's natural instinct is to take care of its flock. And doves in the workplace are very much about the culture. Other people's stress levels, or lack thereof, impact the individual doves. Doves are very wired and clued in to what the general culture is experiencing. And so doves in the workplace seek harmony. They seek intense collaboration for widespread buy-in. Then we go to owls. When you think of an owl, you probably think of a wise owl. I actually think owls are pretty terrifying in the wild, if you think about it. They're up all night. They're hunting. They've got, they can spot prey 2 football fields away at dusk. Insane powers of precision. They've got supersonic hearing. So owls in the workplace, these are, well, you guys are special because you've got powers of precision that are natural to you, but are not natural to other styles. You're just gifted in a particular way. And so we've got these 4 basic behavioral styles. And of course, most of us are a blend of styles. Some of us are eagle parrots, some of us are owl doves, some of us are 3 styles. And let's take a little bit of a deeper look onto how you can recognize both yourself and, of course, the people around you. So for people with a lot of eagle energy, the fundamental focus is results. So when someone with a lot of eagle energy looks at AI, the big question is, well, what's it going to do for me? Not how is it made and what are the different technologies and how cool it is. No, for eagles, it's show me something that I can practically apply or don't waste my time. This is the fundamental focus of people with a lot of eagle energy. If it's not practical, it's not that interesting to me. Now, how can you tell if you're dealing with an eagle? Well, it's not that hard. People with a lot of eagle energy, they're pretty direct. in their communication. They're much more likely to decisively take a risk and learn from that risk. If it's unsuccessful, they'll pop back up and try again. Actually, it's interesting about eagles that they can often come across as arrogant because they'll make decisions without sounding it out with 10 other people or doing a deep, rigorous dive on validity. But it's not arrogance, it's actually humility, because what eagles are saying is, yeah, I'm going to mess it up. So what? That's how I learn. So eagles fall down, get up, fall down, get up. And the more they fall down, the quicker they get up, the more likely they are to win. And so this is why people with eagle energy are so decisive in their decision making, in what other styles would call suboptimal levels of data. Okay, which leads to some interesting tensions there. And last but not least, you're working with an eagle when they just give you this look. Lois, could you just cut to the chase? Could you just get there? Like, what's your point, right? And this energy just comes across, and people can be put off by that, but the purpose behind it is, I want to help you solve a problem. So the sooner you tell me what the problem is, the quicker I can figure out how to help you. So you'll get this energy, and it can be intimidating, but really eagles are just in a hurry to help you. They're problem-solving listeners. So now we go to parrots. Their fundamental focus is, hey, how cool is this? Right? Applying this to AI is all about possibilities. Right? And how do you know you're working with a parrot, or you are one? Well, parrots love to be with people, right? They don't want to be isolated by themselves and figuring it out in their head. They want to socialize whatever it is they're working on so that they can get multiple points of view. And then this makes them really happy and optimistic that solutions will be found, and not the same old, but a fresh approach. Nothing gets a parrot more excited than to do it differently than we've done it in the past, which is actually the exact opposite of what other styles would actually gun for, okay? And parrots want to be jazzed. They want to be excited. They want to be a part of something that's larger than themselves, and that's just pushing the boundaries of what is possible. This is what animates them. So when they look at AI, there's a whole lot of smiling going on. Not because they know what it means, but ironically, because they don't know. It's the ambiguity that's attractive, because this is where discovery comes in. Ooh, great. I get to discover what AI can do for me. That's exciting for parrots, right? Then we go to doves. So what is their fundamental focus? Well, doves want to create a state of harmony in all relationships and in all environments. So how can you tell you're working with the dove? They give you a lot of this energy. They're really good listeners. They're patient, they're empathetic, and they're sincere, because doves want genuine connection with their flock so that we can collectively arrive at the wisest decision. And that takes time, it takes patience, it takes, again, empathy and sincerity of purpose. And so doves are driven by a genuine sense of co-experience. That you're not off, by yourself doing your thing and leaving me behind. No, we're shoulder to shoulder together. And then, of course, with our owls, their fundamental, no surprise, is accuracy. And so, the biggest issue that a lot of owls have with AI is, well, it hallucinates. I can't trust this thing. So why would I even begin to start to use it? And there's tremendous truth to that, right? Except that if AI can cut your time in, I don't know, by 60, 70%, is it useful to you, even if it's not 100% accurate? And if it's not 100% accurate today, well, it's not going to get any dumber tomorrow. Today, it's as dumb as AI will ever be. And tomorrow, it'll be a little bit smarter. So if you're not paying attention, right, you can fall out of step. So how do you know you're working with an owl? It's pretty obvious. Lewis, you got some owl in you. Come on. Right?
I don't know, actually, when we passed through this, I can't remember if it was parrot eagle or eagle parrot. I can't remember which way round it was. But I remember thinking that probably is fairly accurate rendition of me. And
That's great.
actually, like hearing you talk this through and referring back to that previous piece about the rollout of AI,
Yes.
my assumption is actually if you were building like a working group to look at AI and rollout of AI, do you feel like a blend of these would be the right way to go, or like what?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, we are a blend. So very few of us are any one style.
Mm,
Okay. So what we like to say is match the moment, not the mirror. Okay. And so if the moment requires uh, more alacrity in decision making, then even if you're not an eagle, you want to lean eagle in that moment because the decision needs to be made. If the moment requires a slowing down and a deeper dive into what exactly we're doing, it doesn't matter if you're an eagle parrot and that's not easy for you. You need to match the moment,
mm,
right? So the moment itself can be a person you're working with, or it can be the situation you're in.
mm,
So when it comes to change, what is what's the default? Because when we talk about AI, we're talking about rapid, accelerated change, right? There's not a week that goes by that there isn't some AI news that is broadcasting some new capability that wasn't there the week before, right? And so, again, for someone with a lot of eagle energy, if it doesn't accelerate my success, then I don't know why I'm interested in it, okay? And for parrots, it's actually the opposite. Like, I don't know how it accelerates my success, but the chances are pretty good it will. And so I want to spend some time thinking about this, researching it, getting into it, and getting excited about it because that's where the possibilities are. And for the doves, once again, hey, are we all on the same page? Because if we're not on the same page, then we're not going to adopt it. And that's going to create all kinds of issues. And then for the owls, it's like, okay, has this been fully vetted? How come we are trusting this when from our perspective, it's not trustworthy? So when you are communicating change, and in this case, we're talking about AI, and to your question, Lewis, like what, well, let me make sure I remember your question right. So
So
state it.
yeah, I was thinking, like, let's say you are thinking of rolling some AI tooling out in your organization, and you're building like a task force of a team together to go and
Yes,
do that. Seeing this makes me think actually you want a blended team with different types of personalities in, because you may say actually we need the parrot to go and get everyone excited about what's possible, that the arm wavy art of the possible piece, and then you probably also want some doves to go and talk to the compliance department and talk to the IT team and get them on the journey with you. And like that, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's just where I've leapt to very quickly.
sure. And you're correct. What we want to do is honor where everybody's coming from.
Mm,
It's very easy to default to our own perspective and say, well, this should be the primary lens. And that's not true. It depends on the situation. So people that have more powered energy are amazing for what? Knowledge networking. They're out there talking to people, they're watching YouTube videos, they are exploring what is possible. And that's why they get excited. They don't just get excited for the sake of it. They get excited because they are spending time seeing what is out there. They are early adopters by definition, right?
mm,
Parents are just optimistically open. And so, yeah, it's great to have someone like that on your team because otherwise you might miss the fact that, the latest version of GPT-4 is now rivals Midjourney and it's free,
mm.
right? If you don't know that, well, okay, but that's not helping you not to know that, okay? So Parrot Energy brings that in. Hey, did you hear about this? Hey, did you hear about that? Now that can be irritating to other styles, okay? But you want to honor that. And if we're not on the same page from a dove's perspective, then yeah, we're just going to be in a quagmire. And, we work with a lot of teams, Lewis, that they get along on the surface. But, you scratch a centimeter or two below the surface, there's a lot of passive aggressive going on.
Yeah.
And, doves are really good at passive aggressive, by the way, I'm not knocking doves because doves are If you look up level 5 leadership from the book Good to Great, it's all dove traits. So doves are rock stars. But when they're stressed out, yeah, they can do passive aggressive. Okay. And you get a team of owls and doves together, and on the surface, it looks like they're making progress. But are they actually? No. Why not? Because they're not bought in. And to get doves bought in, you need to slow down and talk about it. You need to arrive at some level of consensus. Now, the question is how much consensus, right? We don't want to turn consensus into, a false ideal, because at the end of the day, we are going to be making decisions on suboptimal levels of data. And commitment is more important than absolute consensus. And that's a struggle for doves and a struggle for owls. And, I like to call the owls the guardians of integrity, Lewis. Like, nobody just genuinely cares as much as they do about absolute accuracy, which is incredible. Right?
Yeah, like lots of my team are engineers, and obviously lots of them fall into the owl bird as well, because I think that's very, very much in their nature, that level of accuracy and wanting things to be perfect as well.
That's why the quality of your engineering is so high.
This is true. This is true. I didn't pay you to say that. Thank you.
Well, it's true. I mean, this is noble stuff. Owls are coming from a very noble place. So you get engineers who tend to be some combination of owl and dove owl. And what do you get? Well, the owls are fearful that if we're sloppy, then we're not going to hit the highest quality. And that's going to damage us in lots of ways. And the doves have a fear that we're moving too fast and we haven't thought about the implications of what we're doing. And that's going to disrupt harmony. So you get an entire team of engineers together, most of them are some combo of this. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of that. So what do they need? Well, they need to flex a little bit to eagle. They need to flex a little bit to parrot. Give me 10%. I'm not asking you to reinvent yourself, but this is not a personality profile. This is not about reinventing who you are. This is a behavioral profile, right? So we have all 4 of these styles in us. There are moments when the highest intensity dove owl will flex eagle because that's what's required. We have it in us. And so the question is, can we intentionalize that? And I think the bigger question is, what does AI present? What kind of moment is AI to your particular organization? And there's only one real way to figure that out. And that's to kind of adopt a little bit more of an eagle parrot perspective, particularly parrot, because you have to explore it. The answer is you don't know. Depending on your organization, depending on where you're at, depending on your resources, depending on all kinds of things, AI is going to mean something very different to you and your customer base than it will to another. So how do you figure that out? Well, one thing's for sure. At the individual level, if you're worried that AI is going to replace you, I'd like you to modify that, because nobody knows the answer to that. But what we do know the answer to is that you will definitely be replaced by the person who is using AI if you're not. That's a guarantee. Right? If I'm in Virginia and I got to get to Seattle, of course I can ride a bike. It's possible. I can drive. I can take a train. But if my competition knows about this thing called an airplane, I'll get to Seattle, but they'll get there a lot faster. And so it goes for individuals in your individual careers. It goes for organizations. Right? So does this mean we just dive headlong? No. But it does mean that we shouldn't set up artificial boundaries to ambiguity. We need to embrace ambiguity, embrace it. And that's not easy for owls and doves. But Lewis, you know what the biggest irony is on this? Who do you think created AI in the first place? Do you think the parrots got together one day over a beer at the pub and invented AI? I don't think so.
No.
It was the owls that created it in the first place.
Yeah, I can see that. And certainly when you think back to through time of the people involved in these things, you can certainly see that, how that manifests, can't you?
Yeah. So once again, back to the mirror. Who are you? Like, what makes you tick?
Mm.
Your response to rapid change, to ambiguity. You embrace ambiguity, or is it something that you just, are not so comfortable with, and you prefer to focus on the things that have a lot more clarity and security for you? Just be honest with yourself. Rate yourself, scale yourself on that, and then ask yourself, what is the moment?
Mm.
And match the moment, right? And if you're a leader, you want to be looking at your people and asking the same question, right? Is this person moving too quickly? They're just excited, but they're not grounded, all right? Or do I have a couple of people that are just kind of ignoring this because, it's just too unknown?
Yeah. And that's maybe where, if I referring back then to an implementation plan for this, actually using individuals in your organization to help you get through this in a really logical way, and actually using people with their skills and their communication styles to do different parts of that process may be a good way to approach it. Like blending that working group, that task force team you assemble to help you get through those steps that we looked at.
Yeah, I love that. So what you're suggesting, and it's very smart, is that we do two things at once. On the one hand, leverage people's innate skills.
Mm.
Put the people that have the more parrot eagle energy in roles in regarding AI where it's more natural to them.
Mm.
And the same thing with the owls and doves. But simultaneously, people have to learn how to flex.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got you, there's going to be an adaptation piece of this that is essential for you to figure out what AI means to you and what it means to your organization. Um, because
Mm.
I was really struck, and this is, gosh, I don't know, this is a couple months ago, but Jeff Bezos is kind of a successful guy. Okay, you like him, you don't like him. He kind of knows what he's doing, and he equates AI to electricity. And he just said point blank, AI is not something that's over here that you pull off the shelf when you think you need it. No, AI is going to be woven into everything that we do, no different than electricity.
Yeah.
So the sooner, and by the way, you can get electrocuted from electricity, okay? But that doesn't mean we don't use it. And
Yeah.
it's the same with AI.
Very good. So what I think there's about 5 minutes left. What, if it's all right with you, Dan, maybe we'll just have a quick look at some applications of AI, and how we're using it in WorkBuzz, and I can show that quickly, and then just show you an example of how we've used AI to evaluate the employer value proposition for an organization. And then there's an offer of everyone, if they want to participate and have us perform that on your organization, that might be interesting for you as well. So let me just shuffle this on. So what I'm going to do, we'll go to here. So within our product, our WorkBuzz platform, we have a feature called People Science AI. And to your point, Dan, about being left behind, this product is about solving the double-sided problem that organizations have, and it's all about speed to insight. So we know, talking to lots of our customers, that lots of people leaders get promoted into a leadership role without the skills, without the training, the capability to be effective leaders. They're quite often given access to our product and said, here's all the dashboards, go away and analyze the results of the survey and take action off the back of it. They're then looking to the HR departments to coach them, advise them, help them to understand what this means and which data points are more important than others. And as a byproduct of that, quite often our people science team are brought into organizations to do that coaching role, but they tend to do that at the kind of exec level, leadership level. They're not doing it for every people leader. And what we've tried to do with this product is take that learning and bottle that into WorkBuzz. So when a survey closes, we're using an AI to analyze all of the survey results for every people leader in the organization and provide these really easy to digest summaries that breaks down what you're seeing in the results. as a kind of launch off point to signpost you into what to look at next. So I'll just play this as a brief example.
In conclusion, the survey reveals a generally positive engagement landscape with scores above industry benchmarks and improvements from previous years. Strong areas include understanding of company values and appreciation of diversity. However, there are opportunities for enhancement in mental health support, information flow, and work enjoyment. Addressing these key drivers of engagement could significantly strengthen the employee experience. Clear communication about follow-up actions will be crucial for maintaining high response rates and ensuring more representative insights in future surveys.
So that's just the final section of the summaries that we provide, but it's broken up into various chapters to help you focus on specific things and specific data. But if you imagine every people leader has access to that in your organization, and again, it's about giving these people superpowers through AI to get to what matters quickly. So that's available in our product. And what we've then done as well is said, okay, let's look at some organizations and what does the outside world think of that organization from an employer value proposition perspective. So we've used an AI to analyze all of the outward facing data we can find about that organization. So for example, taking Glassdoor reviews and analyzing those at scale and comparing that to our industry knowledge that we have to see whether you're experiencing similar things to others in your sector. So we've tried to go for a global brand that everyone might be aware of, which is Virgin Atlantic. So let's have a look at that.
Hello, Richard Branson. Today, I will share insights into how Virgin Atlantic employees perceive their work environment and how this aligns with broader industry trends. Our goal is to recommend a listening strategy to enhance engagement and performance. From employee reviews, several positives stand out: a supportive culture, travel perks, and flexibility. However, concerns about pay, career progression, and leadership effectiveness are common. These issues impact your employer value proposition by highlighting both appealing benefits and areas needing improvement. Compared to the travel and logistics industry, Virgin Atlantic faces similar challenges. Attracting young talent and managing seasonal workforce demands are common hurdles. However, your strong culture and diversity are positive differentiators, setting you apart from industry norms. To address these insights, we recommend a focused listening strategy. 1. Leadership effectiveness. Gather feedback on leadership consistency and decision-making transparency. 2. Compensation and benefits. Explore employee perceptions of pay fairness and benefits adequacy. 3. Career opportunities. Assess barriers to advancement and how leadership supports career growth. By focusing on these themes, you'll address both universal industry challenges and unique Virgin Atlantic opportunities. Let us know how we can support this strategy.
So that just gives you an example of just by analysing what's available publicly about Virgin Atlantic, we can start to get a view of what the employer value proposition looks like to the rest of the world. And if people are interested in having a similar thing done for their organisation, they can scan that QR code. And I think Rebecca's going to pop a link into the chat as well, that you can fill in that form and we'll perform the same function for you and give you back this avatar of what the rest of the world use of your organisation. I think we're just 1 minute over, so we're almost bang on time. So I haven't seen any questions coming in the chat, but if anyone has any, feel free to add them, or we can collect them up as well and answer those via email at the end of it. That would be great. Yeah, any final thoughts? We'll just give a minute or two if people want to add any questions, but any thoughts on that, Dan, on the employer value proposition?
I think for me, it's pay attention to your people. They are the instrument of how you're going to achieve the potential of your organization. It is through your people. Until we've all been replaced, until that happens, it still comes down to people. Listen to them, understand where they're coming from, match where they are, and help them lead where it is you are going through, this period of excitement, but also some ambiguity.
Very good. Well, thanks very much for your time, Dan, and thanks for joining, and thanks to everybody else for coming and taking part in this webinar today. And I'm sure that we will be following up with a copy of this recording for you to share as well. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on it if you would like to share those with us as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks,
Hey,
Dan.
I went on a little longer and I didn't give you a lot of time at the end. My apologies for that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. There's still a few people in the audience, so we'll end it and we'll catch up separately.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Terrific.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you for that. It was fun.
Thanks.